Welcome to the Athletic FC podcast with me, Akinwolere. Aston Villa are 18th in the Premier League and have just scored 1 goal so far. So are the team really lazy? And what does Unai Emery need to change? All right, with us in the studio, we have Jacob Tanswell. We've also got Dan Bardell as well. Jacob, let's just lay out the situation. 5 Premier League games, 3 draws, 2 defeats, 1 goal scored for Aston Villa. It's not looking good. And also, it was your question to Unai Emery at the press conference after the 1-1 draw against Sunderland that prompted him to call his players lazy. First and foremost, was it justified? But also, what is he like to deal with? Because it was quite prickly.
Yeah, it's probably the angriest I've seen Unai Emery. I think there's been other circumstances last season away to Monaco where he called out the players' mentality, but he kind of rode back on it after a little while where he said lazy quite a lot in that post-match. And if you see the goal, Isildur's equaliser, and how Granit Xhaka had all that space, you probably say, actually, he's probably got reason to say that. It was funny because usually for away games, the visiting manager comes in first, right? Because they want to get going. But the Sunderland manager came in first, and I'd heard that he actually called his players lazy in another interview. And I thought, I wonder if he would say the same at his press conference, or maybe he would have time to calm down a little bit. So on the third question, you ask about the players' energy levels, and then he just went off and just kept saying lazy, and ultimately I think that speaks of his frustration, because he tried to do a positive spin earlier in the week. He tried to say they were building, they were slowly getting there, and you see the results against Sunderland. But then when you play with an extra player for more than an hour and the other team registers more shots, higher XG, they're the team that maybe could have won that game. You think maybe fundamentally there is something wrong in that team, and maybe compared to last season there's been a huge change and a huge decline.
Yeah, I mean, this is really interesting, isn't it? It's fundamentally, there is something wrong with that team, and we can all see it. And I remember, I'm not a Villa fan, but I've got loads of friends who are Villa fans. And from day one, I was like, there's something a bit off about Aston Villa. But considering that's the overarching conversation, why is the manager coming out and saying that? Because it's surely, at this point, it's about building morale.
I think he'll maybe look at himself as he's got that much power at Villa. He is the main man at Villa, and previously he knows what he's done to this group of players. People will be talking about it being 9 of those players that started at the weekend were there when he arrived. They know where Villa were at when he came through the door, and they know that they've played Champions League football under him. So I think he's kind of got so much credit in the bank with the players that he almost probably thinks he can get away with that. But then saying that, when I've watched Villa this season, if I didn't know better, I would look at them and think, ooh, that's a team that's not playing for the manager here. But that can't be the case because of what Unai Emery's done since he arrived at the club. It's just, I think there's lots of little problems at the moment that when you put them all together, it accumulates in what we're seeing. There's been off-the-pitch issues that have seeped into being on the pitch. I think when the transfer window shut, I hoped that a line would be drawn under everything and we kind of start again. We still haven't won a game. We're barely scoring goals. Still, the 2 goals that we have scored this season have been quite fortunate gifts. I mean, the most positive thing I can think of is that you just said that we were 18th in the Premier League and I thought we were 19th. So we've gone up a place in my mind.
There you go.
I could give you something in this conversation, but it's interesting because you wrote about this as well, is that he watched Sunderland Till I Die in preparation for the match over the weekend. You hear about this?
Yeah.
I mean, it's really interesting because if you think about the entire series, it's about a team sort of in the depths of despair, really, and it's ebbs and flows of that. But what do you make of that? I mean, what's going on? Is he looking for some sort of inspiration to get this team firing?
I can't believe he hasn't seen it, to be fair, because it was a pretty good documentary, wasn't it? Sunderland Till I Die. They've come on quite a lot since then.
Yeah, can I just ask though, and we'll move on to sort of some of the reasons why Villa maybe aren't firing at the moment or working well, is that, from your perspective, you've interviewed this guy several times, and what is he like? Like, because we spoke about it last season, we talked about him being a master tactician, what he could offer Villa could be really, really interesting. But more times than none this season, some of his post-match interviews have been really strange.
Yeah, he's a polite guy. He's an affable guy with media, but he's not one of those that you can get close to, right? When he's suffering, you can tell he's very, introspective. He wants to find the answers himself. And this is the same for all staff, really, apart from the head honchos, president of or director of football operations, Damien Vidaguardian, and prior to this week, Monchi. You couldn't go to him, not many staff out, I can knock on his door and speak to him. That's just the structure of the club. And for 2.5 years, it worked amazingly. You go to Villigani if you've got an issue. You go to Monchi if you've got an issue, but you don't approach Unai because Unai is just there with his tactics board. That's the perception. He's there with his tactics board trying to work out a way to beat the next opposition. And he was seen and still is seen by a lot of people at the club as a genius tactically. But there is a pressure on him now. Can they change? Can they evolve and become better? What I will say is it looks like the players aren't playing for it at the moment because they looked so passive and just so lacking any sort of inspiration. But from what I understand, the players still support him. They're not particularly pleased to be in these hours of analysis session before games, but they accept that this is a winning formula and it's been a recipe that's served them so well. The issue, and we'll come on to, is that the uncertainty of this summer with the saga of Martinez, for example, has caused negativity. And that shouldn't have happened for a team that have been so good, got Champions League, beat PSG, ran them so close to beating them overall, beating Bayern Munich. And now you see them, the mood shouldn't be like this.
Is that what's so surprising from a Villa fan perspective, is that considering where last season ended and the beautiful triumphs, some great moments, by the way, that you've come into this season really flat?
I think when I talk about these little reasons that I think there is for why Villa are on the decline, I think one of them is the fact that they had all those great moments, and then at the big moments at the end of the season, the FA Cup semi-final and the last day against Manchester United, where they quite simply just didn't turn up and rolled over at Old Trafford when they had a chance to qualify for the Champions League. I think there's still an element of a hangover from those big moments because we went into the summer knowing it was going to be difficult anyway. That's fundamentally what was the case. Obviously, lots of different things happened. It's almost as if every player was up for sale. That's going to add to uncertainty. Big players potentially leaving the dressing room, a popular member of the dressing room going to Newcastle, who are perceived as rivals. So that's kind of how you're starting the season before a ball's even been kicked. So I do think that off the pitch has seeped into on the pitch, but I just find it hard because I don't recognise this Villa that I'm seeing at the moment. This isn't the type of football that I associate with Unai Emery teams and Unai Emery's Aston Villa. And it's almost as if the players have just suddenly all become old and slow overnight, which isn't the case. But that's what it looks like. And I think fundamentally the Premier League has changed over the summer. If you look at the good teams now, they're all big, they're all powerful, they all play with width, they're all quick. They're very physical teams. If you watch the Arsenal Manchester City game on Sunday, it felt like every player on the pitch was 6 foot plus. Villa are the opposite of that. Villa don't really have that physical profile aside from a few players. Everything we're doing seems slow and methodical at the moment. It's almost as if football has just moved on in the space of a summer and we've just not realised.
Yeah, can I just ask you, we've asked listeners to send in some questions and stuff, and actually what you're talking about really harks to one question here from a listener, and by the way, both of you take it, is Emery's style outdated now? Seems to be a push for faster and direct style of football in the Premier League nowadays, whereas Unai Emery's calm and controlled. Is there a misfit here?
I think for Emery, he always talks about structure, and if he loses that structure of him, he loses himself as a coach. Fundamentally, he will stay the same. But there's been an expectation for 6 months, maybe, predating the Crystal Palace semi-final, that they would have to evolve in some way. I suggested, and I reported over the pre-season, that maybe they go to a back three system because they haven't got an actual right winger in the squad, incredibly, to compensate for that. But you see the way other teams play, and opposition analysts are clever. They realise that the way that Emery wants to play is through baiting them, they want him to press, attack the vacant space. And at the same time, Villa are a team that want control, but Emery's so wary of transitions. His whole game plan is about avoiding the counter, similar to Guardiola. But you've seen now Guardiola's bringing players in that are more suited to this transitional direct style. A couple of years ago, a lot of teams were playing that. De Zerbi was the one that brought in really, and everyone was seeming to keep the ball at the back and almost wanting the striker to press. Now it's not quite happening, but the risk that Emery has is if he decides to do this, something that is completely opposed to him and not something that he really likes to coach, if things go wrong or continues to go wrong, what is there left for him? Because he hasn't got that identity anymore. And if he loses the structure, he feels that he probably loses his way as a coach. Yeah,
in fairness, Dan, I mean, you could say the same, as you said. Guardiola might need to adapt. Arteta, as we saw against Manchester City, might need to adapt. Is Unai Emery in that camp as well? Does he need to adapt?
I think one of the best things about supporting Villa over the last few years is, although I knew what Emery's structure was going to be, there was always these kind of subtle changes game to game. Like Martinez might clip the ball to the fullback one week, the next week we'd be going really long, the next week it would be playing to the centre backs, because it's almost like he'd identified the weaknesses in the opposition. At the moment, it does feel, and I'm sure they're not doing this, but it does feel a little bit like we're just rolling the same thing out week after week, and it's not working, and we haven't realised. I think if you look at the teams that we've played, I don't think it's unreasonable for Villa fans to have expected to have yielded more points and better performances and more goals
newly
from
promoted
the teams they've played. Yeah, look, I looked at those
10
first
men,
that
whole narrative.
I looked at those. I mean, we're hopeless against 10 men. That's a different story. I looked at the first 8 games and thought, okay, the squad's maybe not where we want it, but it's a chance for a platform to start the season off. We've done the opposite, and then the fixtures become a little bit more unkind, especially when you get to December. We've got some really horrible games. You're then starting to balance Thursday night with Sunday night, which we've been good at previously, but you don't know how they're going to cope with that this time round. It's a really, really difficult time at the moment. And at the moment, I've got to be honest, I don't see how it changed. And I hate being negative, but I don't see how it changes.
I don't want to be the report of doom, but ideally, or maybe in another situation, they wouldn't have any points. If you go through the draws, Newcastle, no Isak, Gordon plays at number 9, missed 2 chances, Beto missed big chance early on. They score that at home, could run away from Villa, and then suddenly have a player sent off as well. So maybe 3 points are quite lucky to get.
All right, let's dig into some of the reasons. We've covered some so far as to why Aston Villa don't seem to be firing and don't seem themselves so far this season. Jacob, you reported last night, actually, that Emery's long-term ally, Monchi, who we mentioned earlier in the pod, is set to leave his role as Villa president of football operations. Has he actually left by now at the time of recording this? And do you know who's going to replace him as well?
You're awaiting confirmation at the moment. Roberto Alabi will replace him. I've been told since probably the deadline day that Monchi's future had been up for debate. It's a collective thing, really, in terms of he would like to go back to Spain for personal reasons, but at the same time, something had to give at Villa, right? Mm-hmm. We talk about the 9 at the start and 11 were here before Emery, but you look at the 28 players Emery signed since coming, how many have really made an impact? And this is where I think the power struggle or power divide was when Emery and Monchi worked together at Sevilla when they won 3 Europa Leagues. Monchi had, even if not higher power than Unai Emery. Now he came in to work under him. So Monchi will bring a load of players to Unai Emery and say, what players do you want? But ultimately, it's Emery that vetoes and makes his decisions.
Right.
And when you're in a window where you're still fighting PSR, UEFA squad cost, you've got all these things to worry about, but you've got a manager that is pushing you to sign players, and then you bring some players to him, and then not the ones he wants, and he prefers this one. Of course, there's going to be debates. And then if Unai Emery's listening to other people and he's not listening to you anymore, that could cause debates as well. But it was surprising because this is a power triangle, Monchi, Vidagani, Emery, that has brought immense success. And then to see the first cracks in the Emery project almost, it's not great. They've obviously brought Alabi in, and he has got a history of Unai Emery, right? He coached Real Union, which is a team that Villa now own, but Emery's boyhood club. So you probably are likely to see that the team and the way the structure of the club is ran is still going to be Emery FC, basically. It's still going to be his hierarchy, his structure, over a dozen Spanish staff. So you're really hedging your bets and you're going all in on Emery working this season, and him, more importantly, wanting to stay and believing that the project has still got legs.
Yeah, what choice do Villa have right now? I mean, it's not that you're going to get rid of the manager at this really precarious time in the season, and also with PSR issues, it's not like you're going to get rid of all those players. Surely this new appointment, should that give Villa fans some sort of hope that things might turn around?
I think he's obviously got good pedigree. If you look at what he's done in Spain and some of the players he's kind of been around and brought to the club and what they've done in their career since being there. But every club is different.
Right.
So the kind of permutations he's working at Sociedad are different to what you're going to be walking into at Villa. It's a different league. For example, Villa's recruitment will be very different style to Sociedad's recruitment as well. Fundamentally, I don't think anything will change for the reasons that Jacob just said. I love my wife, I love my dog. Unai Emery is up there.
God.
with both.
I'm really sorry, Dan's wife and dog. Look what's happened. Football trumps again.
Unai Emery is up there as one of the most important people in my life for what he's done to Aston Villa. But I was saying to Jacob earlier that he is Villa's biggest strength, But I do feel now at the moment that there's certain things that come with him that are almost a little bit of a weakness for Villa as well, because the squad is lopsided. They've not got players in certain positions. I feel like attacking-wise, everyone kind of wants to play in the same space. The age profile's not right. And if Emery's the one who's got the final say over that over the last 3 years, yes, we've had a really successful 3 years, but it feels like that was all geared around the kind of short term. Now we need something long term, and it's almost not there. We've not got players coming through. We've not got, say, an older player in one position and a younger player who's ready to come and take that place. It all feels a little bit skewed at the moment. So I don't think a change of director of football is going to really make a huge difference, if I'm honest.
I think the bigger issue is probably the evolution of the squad, right? They've been there for a long time. The new signings, one of the reasons why Monchi's gone, has not made a desired impact. The question is, these players, the spine of the team that's been there for so long, have you now maximised their potential? Have they just got maybe old and they haven't got anything left to give? Maybe they're not old in terms of actual age, but in terms of their time at Villa, have they got any? Can they go to that next level? Can you expect likes of John McGinn, Matty Cash, Mings, Watkins to keep pushing themselves, to keep being in European competitions? Do you think at some point you're going to bottom out and other teams are going to catch up? So the question for me is not a case of Emery's structure, but it's more of a case of, can he start to build longer term? Can he start to buy players where he's not just thinking we need to win now? You saw in January, Rashford and Asensio on loan, over £500,000 a week combined. We need to win now. Can you now start signing players that obviously benefit you in the short term, but are younger and can improve in the long term?
Has he done that anywhere? Like, to my memory, he's not done that anywhere, has he?
Question.
If you look
he hasn't been there long enough.
Yeah, he's 3 years is the cycle, isn't he? If you look at Villarreal and Sevilla, from what I remember, he was operating with quite experienced squads and getting the best out of those experienced players, but then he was almost not there to take on the next phase. If you've got to worry about that.
I think so. I think with Morgan Rogers is one, right? But it's because he saw him while scouting against Middlesbrough for the FA Cup game, and he thought, he was quite good. But he always wants players that are proven to him, so naturally they're going to be older.
Can I just also ask then, if we're talking about freshening this squad, what you guys have made of the summer transfers? I mean, it was late, some of them, and certain players wanted to leave and weren't allowed to leave. And by that, I mean Emil Martinez. What have you made of it? Because do you think the people that have come in are going to freshen this squad enough to at least carry them to January before they might have to maybe think again?
I think there's still a question mark, and the players have spoken to privately, to family, to friends, that they were crying out for freshness, but also players of high quality that can take them to that next level. They're seeing the likes of Newcastle try and sign these big players. They wanted Villa to do the same, and it probably doesn't help that a lot of these players, like Dan referenced, didn't know where they were coming or going. Like Emi Martinez might be coming or going, Watkins, McGinn, all these players. And that, when you're building for a season, you're not sure if you're staying in your job or not. It's not great, is it?
No, I've a little bit of sympathy with Martinez. I don't think he handled himself as well as he could have done over that whole saga with Manchester United. But on the flip side of that, if the players are told, look, if someone comes in for you, we're in a difficult situation here, you've got to go. I don't think you can then have a go at someone who's maybe agitated to make a move. You can question whether it should be to Manchester United and what they're about. But I do have a little bit of sympathy with him. I just think everything feels up in the air at the moment. Nothing feels certain. Like, if you'd have asked me, do I think Emery will be here for the next few years, this time last year? Absolutely, 100%. Villa are doing well in the Champions League. Everything feels good. A year on from probably about a year ago, we beat Bayern Munich in the Champions League. I don't feel certain about things now. People keep asking me, do you think he'll leave? Do you think he'll leave? I don't think he'll get the sack, because I think Villa would be stupid to sack him. But I don't have the confidence that I did have a year ago that he's here for the long haul, because I think he wants to be operating at the absolute highest level possible in premium European competition. And with the way the rules are and the way Villa have been hit, I think it's going to be hard for Villa to get back there, if I'm honest.
Basically, the transfer strategy would change every day, because sometimes Unai Emery would want a player in a certain position, but then he'd go home, maybe reassess and think, actually, I can move the player we already have into that position, and therefore we need another one. So transfer strategy can feel a bit opaque from the outside, and Martin was a good example, right? So they said, you can go, right? And this was at the end of last season. He was telling everyone he wanted to go. He was very happy to leave. And Villa, and this is in our piece now, is they wanted Mark Flecken from Brentford. They were advancing on talks to sign him, but then obviously a move for Emi Martinez didn't line up, and then they missed the boat on Flecken. So there are a number of players, and if you go on deadline day, did Emery want them as first choice targets? Harvey Elliott, Sancho and Lindelof? No. But Sancho was on the shelf and they were willing to take a gamble. Lindelof was a free agent. obviously cost effective. And Harvey Elliott, okay, he's young, but Emery wanted Paquetá. So ultimately, the recruitment is what it is. They've been stifled by PSR, etc. But it's just a team that are fulfilling Emery's needs and desires to improve every year. The squad's probably gone backwards.
When you mentioned Sancho, it got me thinking of another question a listener sent in, and in particular wide players, which is something Villa are really lacking at this moment in time, is that why didn't Villa push for Marcus Rashford to make that move more permanent after the relative success of his loan spell? Is that a PSR thing, or did Marcus Rashford just fancy Barcelona?
Both, but they're pretty big
Another
issues.
team wearing claret and blue. Do you know what I mean?
Pretty big issues in terms of the player probably doesn't want to come. Barcelona, he was already down the line there, but also at that point Villa didn't know how much money they had spent because none of the players had gone, and they were so tight with all these rules, and they're going to incur, or likely to incur, a fine with UEFA for squad cost rules. So they can't afford to pay whatever it is for Rashford if you're going to make it permanent, but also his massive salary. And yeah, again, he probably didn't want to join either.
I'm not sure he'll have too many regrets, Marcus Rashford, in all honesty.
Now, does this season also hinge, Dan, on people like Ollie Watkins stepping up? Because that's another player who looked like he might be leaving this time last season as well.
I think it's a collective. I think people will look at the striker because we're not scoring goals, but okay, I had a late chance on Sunday against Sunderland, but how many chances is he getting game to game? Not many. How many times is he touching the ball game to game? Not a lot. I think Villa aren't getting the best out of what's at their disposal at the moment, but I do also think that, we think of that night against PSG, you're bringing Marco Asensio onto the pitch. You've got Marcus Rashford absolutely running them ragged. Tielemans is fit at that point and was Villa's player of the season. Like it's a different Villa now. It's a slower Villa. I don't think people realise how much having Marcus Rashford just added some pace and power to that side, and it was crying out for it. I don't think Villa can get a better number 9 than Ollie Watkins. I think on his day, he's at the top end of what Villa can attract at the moment. I think you look at his record over the last 2-3 years under Emery, his record's right up there in terms of goals and assists for centre forwards in Europe. But he looks miles off it at the moment. But he's not alone. I think it's hard for Watkins to step up with the way things are at the moment. 16 Premier League goals last season and 19 the year before. He's well off it at the moment, isn't he?
Yeah, and going into the season, people made their concerns that actually a lot of the attacking burden would fall on Ollie Watkins to finish and Morgan Rogers to deliver. Rogers is not an unknown quantity anymore. He's even said it himself. Defenders are getting tight to him. James Tarkowski roughed him up in the away to Everton. With Watkins, he's an example of something intangible. You can't quite put your finger on it, but he is suffering with confidence massively because he hasn't scored. But you've got to go back to January. He was available to leave in January, but John Duran had gone instead. So he didn't get his move to Arsenal. And at 29, this could have been the last opportunity for him to go. And obviously Villa had rightly said, Duran's going, you're staying. And okay, he's thinking, okay, I'm going to be the number 9 now. Marcus Rashford starts ahead of him in both legs against PSG. A lone player starting ahead of you. What message does that send out? And then all of a sudden, again, you don't get your move away. Your price and probably the interest in you, the attraction of you is going down, and then you start into the season and you know that the manager probably hasn't got that belief in you because he put you on a bench for the biggest game of his tenure. So yeah, he's a player that Villa would desperately want to step up. But I think he was before the game against Sunderland, he was averaging like 11 passes per game, and when he does get the ball, it's head height. It's when he's got someone near him, he hasn't got the pace of anyone else to run him behind. There's a lot of pressure on him and a lot of pressure on Morgan Rogers.
Can I also ask a quick question before we move on to the next one? Is that what does Villa's academy system look like right now? Because, like many teams, you can always hopefully look there. And, I'm thinking about Max Damon, who's at Arsenal right now, or Nwaneri, who have come through. Are Villa miles behind everyone else? No,
there's actually a lot of people, and there's a perception that Villa have got a really strong academy. They won the FA Youth Cup last year. They've got a lot of good players. The academy recruitment is really good, actually, really strong. They signed this guy, George Hemmings, young lad from Nottingham Forest, and they're very aggressive in who they sign from other clubs in Premier League, in the EFL. And he's seen as, if he doesn't make it into the first team, then we might as well give up.
Yeah, exactly.
But again, this is a consequence of short-term thinking. You have to be at a top level. You have to come not only into the training group, but you've got to prove to Emery that you're of Champions League quality.
Dan, any glimmers of hope? New signings, Elliott, Gasson, Sancho.
I thought Gasson had a decent game. at Sunderland on Sunday. I liked a few of the brief touches I saw from him. It's hard to gauge these players coming into what Villa are right now because they're not coming into a winning team. They're not coming into a team that's full of confidence and playing well, so it will take time. Sancho, I think he's the one actually that I think actually fits what we're trying to do in terms of his position in the team. I can see where we might play him. We disagree on this, but I can see him as the left number 10. But then you're almost back to kind of playing 3 number 10s because you've got Rodgers and then you'd expect Harvey Elliott to play as well. This is what I'm talking about with the recruitment and the skewed squad that we've got now. It's all the players want to play in the same place, but absolutely nobody wants to play on the right wing and there's no width whatsoever. I was pleased to get Elliott because I didn't expect him to come in. I wasn't the type of signing I was expecting on deadline day. Villa kept the powder dry because they were waiting to see what headroom they were going to have and they used that well to get Harvey Elliott in and he'll become a permanent player after he's played 10 games. But as I say, it's hard to come into that team at the moment. Elliott came on at the weekend and was almost told off for being too quick when I would say, well, we need a bit of quickness in this team right now. At the moment. It's not bizarre, isn't it?
How many players have come in and strengthened or a part of Emery's plans, right? That's the reason why he's starting 9 of the 11 that, were there before him. These players, it takes a lot to earn Emery's trust and to play consistently. Maybe Amadou Onana, 50 million club record signing, he struggled with injuries. Maybe he could force his way in. But for the likes of Harvey Elliott, who wasn't his first choice target, him coming in and expect him to start straight away and press straight away was always going to be a tough ask. But we talk about, and we're very negative to it, understandably, but it feels just strange, doesn't it, that you're only 5 games into a league season and Villa fans, staff, players already feel quite weary and it feels like this has been 2 or 3 seasons, not just 5 games.
Well, in that vein then, what does Unai Emery need to do to keep his job this season? Because I don't think it's unforeseeable, Dan, to see Villa finishing bottom end of the table and winning the Europa League, for instance. I mean, would you take that?
I got asked this the other day, would I take 17th in the Europa League? And I said 5 weeks ago I wouldn't have done, but right now it feels like I'd be stupid not to snap someone's hand off for it. The Europa League's really, really important for Villa. It's important this week.
It's also a competition he loves very much.
Yeah, it's important this week because they need a win.
Yeah,
they get a win against Bologna, who they beat last season on Thursday night. Maybe that kickstarts things a little bit. Kind of being away from the Premier League might be good for them, but then I thought that last week in the Carabao Cup, and that wasn't the case. I think it kills 2 birds with one stone. We're talking about Villa having an ageing squad. I'm ageing. I was turned 40 last week. Villa last won a trophy when I was 10.
Yeah,
I thought that was normal, and it hasn't been normal. If Villa can somehow win that tournament, they get a trophy, and they get into the Champions League, which is where Emery wants to be and where the players will want to get back to. I think it's huge in Villa's season, especially given how they've started as well. I think the Europa League almost takes on more importance, but I don't want to be in that situation where you kind of throw in the league like Spurs did to try and win a trophy, because ultimately your Premier League's your bread and butter that you're going to watch every week. And
okay, well, let's end with a bit of fun, gents. Let's shake this off. Let's shake off the negativity and just come back into the room.
Let's do a little quiz. Let's get into some more detail around Aston Villa. Just a little fun to finish things off. All right, this is it. Can you name the top 5 signings in terms of transfer fee in the Unai Emery era at Aston Villa? Fees according to the website Transfer Market. You've already mentioned one of them. Can you remember it?
Who did we speak about? Tielemans has got to be in there. Oh, sorry, I've missed.
Moussa Diaby?
Yes. Do you remember how much for?
This is different compared to who you ask. 45 million?
Yeah, it's about 55 million euros. Okay, that's good.
Onana.
Yes, we already mentioned that. Do you remember what price?
50
yeah,
million.
So it's like 59 million euros.
Ian Matson?
Yes.
Well done, Jacob.
37.5, 30.
Yeah,
35.
So, if you're going pounds, it's about 44.5 million euros. Another one, Spanish.
Pam Torres?
Yes, come on, lad.
There you go.
And one more. We've actually already mentioned it.
Have we?
Yeah.
Do you know?
5. This is the last on the list.
So it's less than Pau Torres. He was about 20.
It's not much less than Pau Torres.
Are you counting Harvey Elliott or not?
No.
Okay.
Harvey Elliott's not in the list.
Guess on.
Yes.
It's on there.
Oh, you brought it back
There we
there
go.
because he cleaned up.
I needed something. I was like,
You're a bystander, Dan.
I was like Villa in front of goal. I was like,
Shooting blanks, mate.
Froze.
No, I know. Honestly, that was great. Appreciate it. That was 30 million euros as well. So, number one, Amadou Onana from Everton, 59 million euros. Moussa Diaby from Leverkusen, 55 million euros. Ian Maatsen from Chelsea, 44.5 million euros. Paul Torres from Villarreal, 33 million euros. And finally, Evan Gassant from Nice for 30 million euros. Gents, I really appreciate your time. Jacob, Dan, appreciate you joining us. And also thank you guys for watching. We're back soon. For more from the Athletic FC podcast, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. We've got top journalists like David Ornstein, Matt Slater, Adam Crafton, Carl Anker, and plenty more through the entire season. Make sure you don't miss an episode of the Athletic FC. You can get it wherever you get your podcasts from.